Well, I do trust in God, but I don't trust this government to ensure that our currency doesn't collapse, and that's a grave concern to me and to many others. It seems that our currency these days is only supported by empty promises and sometimes threats of violence. So I'm going to read an excerpt from Thomas Jefferson, a letter that he wrote in 1816, where he talks about the dangers of the public debt and what it does to our society. And this was a letter from then retired President Thomas Jefferson to Samuel Kercheval, Monticello, July 12, 1860. And it says, quote, "I am not among those who fear the people. They, and not the rich, are our dependents for continued freedom. And to preserve their independence, we must not let our rulers load us with perpetual debt. We must make our election between economy and liberty, or profusion and servitude. If we run into such debts as that, we must be taxed in our meat and in our drink, in our necessaries and our comforts, in our labors and our amusements, for our callings and our creeds, as the people of England are. Our people, like them, must come to labor 16 hours in the 24, give the earnings of 15 of these to the government for their debts and daily expenses, and 16th being insufficient to afford us bread, we must live, as they do now, on oatmeal and potatoes. Have no time to think, no means of calling the mismanagers to account, but be glad to obtain subsistence by hiring ourselves to rivet their chains on the necks of our fellow sufferers. Our landholders too, like theirs, retaining indeed the title and stewardship of estates called theirs, but held really in trust for the treasury, must wander, like theirs, in foreign countries, and be contented with penury, obscurity, exile, and the glory of the nation. This example reads to us the salutary lesson that private fortunes are destroyed by public as well as private extravagance. And this is the tendency of all human governments. A departure from principle in one instance becomes a precedent for a second, that second for a third, and so on, till the bulk of the society is reduced to be mere automatons of misery, and to have no sensibilities left but for sinning and suffering. Then begins, indeed, the bellum omnium in omnia, which is the war of all against all, which some philosophers, observing to be so general in this world, have mistaken it for the natural, instead of the abusive state of man. And the forehorse of this frightful team is public debt. Taxation follows that, and in its train, wretchedness and oppression. So the debt is just, it's way out of control. They tell us there's 17 trillion in debt. I don't believe that. I believe it's much more than that. And there's all the unfunded liabilities. The government seems to prefer that the people are dependent upon the government for assistance and to survive. And I don't want to live in a country where over half the people don't have jobs and can't support their families, because that gives way too much power and control to those that hold the treasury and hold our money. There's another issue that has really concerned me, and that's the electrical grid. Our entire society is based upon electricity, and our electrical grid has never been secured against an electromagnetic pulse attack or against a solar flare. This is something, there's two bills in Congress that have been laboring there for years. One is called the SHIELD Act, the other is called the GRID Act. And Congress is sitting on their hands. They keep kicking this political football down the road, and eventually we're going to run out of road. And this is a major problem, because our very life depends upon the electrical grid. And this is a major problem, and there's not enough cornfields in all of Iowa to wish this problem away into. So that's one of the main things that I'm advocating for in this campaign, is to secure the grid. And I would finally finish up here with a tribute to all the soldiers out there, past and present and future, who have defended our way of life, defended our country. And without them, my speaking here today wouldn't be possible. and this fair wouldn't be possible. And it's so sad. They tell us there's 20 or so soldiers that commit suicide every day in this country because of the lack of mental health care and medical care, and they've just given up hope. So I would hope that all of us, if you know someone that has served and they're in a time of need, that you reach out to them, you talk to them, you help them whatever way you can. And I'm going to read this little poem. It's called "Just a Common Soldier," and this was written on my grandfather's funeral program. He was getting old and paunchy, and his hair was falling fast. And he sat around the Legion, telling stories of the past, of a war that he had fought in, and the deeds that he had done. In his exploits with his buddies, they were heroes, everyone. And though sometimes to his neighbors, his tales became a joke, all his Legion buddies listened, for they knew whereof he spoke. But we'll hear his tales no longer, for old Frank has passed away, and the world's a little poorer, for a soldier died today. He will be mourned by many, including his children and his wife. He lived an ordinary and quite uneventful life. He held a job and raised a family, quietly going his own way. And the world won't note his passing, though a soldier died today. Should you find yourself in danger, with your enemies at hand, would you want a politician with his ever-shifting stand? Or would you prefer a soldier who has sworn to defend his home, his kin, and country, and would fight until the end? He was just a common soldier, and his ranks are growing thin. But his presence should remind us we may need his like again. For when countries are in conflict, then we find the soldier's part is to clean up all the troubles that the politicians start. If we cannot do him honor while he's here to hear the praise, then at least let's give him homage at the ending of his days. Perhaps just a simple headline in a paper that would say, "Our country is in mourning, for a soldier died today." I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank the Des Moines Register for this podium and the Iowa State Fair for the time. And if anyone has questions about my campaign, my name's Bryan Jack Holder. I'm running for the 3rd Congressional District. My website is holderforiowa.com. That's HOLDERFOR Iowa.com. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us at the Political Soapbox. We'll be with you for the rest of the fair. Take care.